Welcome back to the Dynasty Market Watch, where yesterday's price is not today's price. We got the band back together. Matt, Brian, myself, Todd, we are ready to rock post week one. We're going to get back into the thick of things. We're talking bull or bear to kick it off. We're going to go through some rookies. We're going to hit the vets. We're talking about some trades that we're trying to make some offers on. We might even have some trades that have already happened. We're going to get to all of that. Week one, a lot to unpack. Yesterday's price is not today's price. Brian, play that Fat Joe.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
All right, Matt, who is your bull or bear post week one?
Yeah, for those who haven't listened in a while, last year we did bull bear, who were bullish on, bearish on, coming off of each week. For this one, the guy that just jumped out at me that I've been down on ever since he was originally drafted is Jameson Williams. And this is something that tends to happen during primetime games. Everybody's watching one game. Everybody, myself included, can tend to overreact to that one game because it's the only one on. Jameson Williams is a guy that I've never had that much interest in, despite his high draft capital. I always viewed him as like a high A-dot, low target share guy. There was questions about his work ethic, his maturity, et cetera, et cetera. He just looked fucking awesome last night against the Rams. He got open at will. There was a lot made of Dan Campbell in the offseason talking about, he's going to step up. We're hoping, he steps into that role. They didn't bring any receiver help at all this offseason. They let go of Josh Reynolds, didn't replace him with anybody except Tim Patrick, I guess, on the practice squad. So, yeah, I think it might just be wheels up for Jameson Williams. Like before last night, I probably wouldn't have paid a late second for him. And now it's like any price that's not a late first, I'm entertaining. If it's like 2 seconds, sure, take my 2 seconds and I'll take the flyer on JMO. So he's definitely going up for me. And he's the one that stood out to me that caught my attention.
I mean, anytime you can buy a guy that just alpha'd ARSP for 1 week, I say that jokingly, obviously, but yeah, anytime you can pay less than a 1 for a guy like that with his talent, I'm on board with that, Matt. I think it's somebody that's going to be, potentially skyrocketing in value if he puts another game together like that. It's wheels.
He has so much juice. Yeah, just so much juice. And yesterday I did Monday morning wide receiver, so I'm going to just show on the screen for YouTube where I've got JMO, which is down in this like empty producers with yield, which is basically 2 late 2s or an early second. And kind of what you just said, Brian, I mean, like another game like that, I think you've got to move him up into like Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers type range. Like, I mean, if he goes for another big game, I mean, I'm not talking about like 4 for 50. Like, no, he needs to post another like 5 or 6 and 100. And then like, all right, well, what's the difference between like him and JSN or him and Jordan Addison? I mean, Jaden Reed is getting touchdowns and he like looks the part. He's kind of doing like the more consistent version of what JMO did week one. So yeah, I think I can see a world where he does that again. And I'm like, yeah, JMO basically in that range.
And one thing that I adopted last year that I kind of got from the philosophy from Keep Trade Cut, which I do think is kind of a stupid tool and website. But one thing that they have that they coined a phrase called like a 2-week bump. And generally the philosophy behind the 2-week bump is after 1 week of a flukishly good performance, managers don't really tend to value it that much. They're still willing to sell you that player. And then after 2 weeks of good performances, then the value starts skyrocketing like you just mentioned, Todd. So
yeah,
like if you're trying to buy low on a guy, like we'll talk about Caleb and Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't think this week was enough. I think you need to see multiple bad weeks. But if you're trying to like buy high on a guy after 1 week, you generally can get some of those type of deals done. So
yeah, it's a good point. The 2-week bump can go either way. It can go up or down on that value train. And one only other comment I've got on JMO, I've got 1 share and I actually got it from Matt. And that trade was essentially JMO, I think like Jermaine Burton, maybe like another scrub type play, like a Troy Franklin or something. We combined them all together to probably equal on the trade, like a 2nd round pick is probably, I don't remember the trade exactly, but it was a bunch of bums and JMO included. And the idea, I think, was probably that they combined worth was a second. And that's typically not how I want to make a trade. But I'm a tanker, and I just decided, you know what, give me a bunch of darts. And yeah, I feel pretty good about getting JMO. I think I probably lost that trade and over the last like few months. And so JMO bouncing back is helpful. But yeah, I think getting darts like that in the offseason, it's nice to see them do something week one.
And one of the players that I paid like more than a late first in value in that trade to acquire was T. Higgins. Like, how far away from like JMO surpassing T. Higgins are we? Like, now we're in the season again. Like, we forget how.
Well, you know me, I'm a huge T. Higgins guy, so I don't see that anytime soon. But that's a good point.
Yeah,
it's a valid thing to bring up as my eyes bug out of my fucking head. Yeah. So here's another guy similar to this. I hope, being a Colts fan, Adonai Mitchell is someone that I think could absolutely explode in value for a couple of reasons. I think he's super talented, and anyone that's heard me talk about him before, I've always been very high on him, his talent. I love that the Colts drafted him. I think he has a direct route to be their number one receiver. Not necessarily tomorrow, but real soon potentially. I could see like an absolute, like by like week 5 or 6, if all things go according to plan on his end and their end, skyrocketing in value. Like how so many rookies in the past have done. Some of your favorite names that I don't want to mention them in the same sentence as Mitchell, but we all know who I'm talking about probably. He had his box score is not going to, and we're going to talk about a little bit about this later, but his box score didn't pop. But if you watch the game, there was 2 times especially where he could have had, 60, 70 yard touchdowns, and all of a sudden we're looking at 150 yards and 2 touchdowns week 1 as a rookie. And I don't see why that's not a possible situation again next week. I think Richardson wants to throw it deep. They're going to keep throwing it deep. I think Alec Pierce sucks. I think Michael Pittman's probably an overrated, but just kind of like a good dude to have, but not anybody that's a stud. Direct route. Why not? I'm going to go wheels up with him. I think you could probably get him for a 2. And anywhere that I can do that, if I don't already have him, I'm going to try and pursue that this upcoming week before it's too late.
Yeah, the talent seems there with AD Mitchell. Fantasy Points has their average separation score.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, go ahead.
He was number 1 in the week. Limited sample size, obviously. I mean, we're talking about like week 2, it could turn and he could be back in the pack. Marvin Harrison Jr. though was last for all rookies, so that is something to keep note of. But AD Mitchell, yeah, I mean the talent seems to be there. I just don't think that the Colts are going to throw it enough for it to really be meaningful, which is why I've continued to be down on Matt's boy, Josh Downs, and really Michael Pittman for that matter. But Michael Pittman just continues to demand targets, seems like week in and week out. I mean, last year he was over 30% target share. I think it'll probably come down a little bit this year since Josh Downs is probably emerging a little bit more, hopefully coming out of injury. And then AD Mitchell, like Brian mentioned, I think the talent is definitely there, but throwing it 20, 25 times is just not going to get it done. You could have a 25% target share, and that's not going to be great. And I don't think he's probably going to have a 25% target share. We're probably looking at somewhere between like 15 and 20% in that offense. So yeah, I really like the talent. I don't like this situation, and he also has other receivers that kind of command the ball, so that does concern me a bit. But for
here's one pushback I have, that I think he has the pop games where if you acquire him low, you could sell him high. I don't see where there's a route where you have to like, I trade for Mitchell and then I just keep Mitchell for the end of time. Like, I think there's something that very clearly in a couple weeks he could gain enormous value. And then if you're like, oh, I don't really like the usage or whatever the case is, I'm sure there's going to be a selling point if he does what I think he's capable of.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you guys. So like I 100% agree with you, Brian, on AD Mitchell's bull case. And I do agree with the concerns about AR and the overall volume, but kind of the point that you were just saying, outside of like the top tier guys, we're talking Caleb, Marvin Harrison, like last year, we're talking Bijan Gibbs. Outside of those elite rookies, I really don't care about points at all the entire season. I just want them to maintain or gain value, especially gain value, obviously. show glimpses, show flashes of like high end play. And I think Mitchell did that. And I do think that the market has a better understanding. I think we should give the general marketplace more credit for understanding the situation, right? Like if AD Mitchell only has 3 or 4 targets a game, but that's like an 18% target share, and his yards per route run are awesome, and he's getting like wide open on all those open metrics, like he's still going to have enormous value, even if he's averaging 9 points a game, just because people will be patient. Like, oh, situations change, etc. So I do agree that you should buy him now, and if you can, especially for any second, I'm good with. And to Todd's point, probably shouldn't be expecting a guy that you can start weekly yet.
So Todd, it seems like you're the most hesitant with him, even though you're speaking to his talent. What are you comfortable paying out the door right now for Mitchell?
I would pay like a late second or a mid second for him. I'm just not as optimistic that I'm going to be able to turn around and profit on that later in the year. And I would highly doubt that someone's going to say, yeah, let me draft him in a mid second and then turn around and trade him for a mid second after one game. So I would guess it's going to take closer to 2 seconds to get him. And I don't feel comfortable there. I agree with you on the talent, though. If I can see the Colts getting up to like 35 attempts per game, which I don't, then okay, I'm in. Like, let's do it, because I like him more than Downs. Like I have notably not liked Downs. I think he's a better talent than Downs, and I think eventually he'll get more targets. But for now, it's just a really clogged room. I mean, Pierce has a role with that team because of his style. He's just a wind sprint guy, and he's getting like 3 bombs a game. Most games he won't catch any. One game he will, and then like the other day he caught 2. So like he's just gonna be random. So AD Mitchell is fine, like a second, but I don't think I can get
bonus. Sell Alec Pierce.
Yeah. If you can.
Yeah, he's probably on your waiver
for anything.
Wire,
yeah, fair.
All right, so my bull or bear, I'm going to go with a guy that laid an absolute egg week 1, and that's Dalton Kincaid. I really don't care about the fact that he did nothing week 1. And a lot of tight ends did nothing week 1. And so if I can take someone's concern for him and move him onto my roster, I'm all in. He's still a guy that I deem that can be a top 3 or 4 tight end this season. And I really don't have any concerns longevity wise. The targets weren't there. He had 2 targets maybe in that game. You're shaking your head. I think it was one or
no. I was shaking my head like agreement. Like, man, that's
yeah. I mean, it was a rough outing. It was a rough outing, but a lot of tight ends were really bad. And so I'm willing to continue to buy Dalton Kincaid. The receivers in that range that you could look to move are some of those Ayuk types, or I'll just pull it back onto the screen just so we have all those wide receivers like Ayuk, like guys like DK, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, T. Higgins. If you can move one of those guys and add maybe a little bit to get Kincaid.
All didn't have great week 1s.
Yeah, they all didn't have great week 1s. That's a good point. One issue that you've got also is that like Njoku and Ferguson are hurt. So the number of tight ends in the leagues are pretty low. But if you can maybe add to Kittle, if someone's concerned about Kincaid, I would be willing to jump in because I still think he's a high-end potential top 3 tight end.
So whatever this means in Vegas, his over-under for receptions for week 1 was 5.5. And it was like minus 150. So like pretty strong favorite that he was going to go over those receptions. This week, again, for whatever this means, it's 4.5. So it's down 1, and the odds are on the under. So Vegas is not one to usually super overreact. So that's take from that what you will. But it's an interesting, if you believe in Kincaid, I just don't understand why the targets weren't there for a guy that was supposed to be a security blanket. It's not like they were throwing the ball down the field left and right.
There was some film breakdown that some folks did where they were showing like literal boxes of 3 and 4 defenders around Kincaid in the middle of the field. Okay. It does seem Jonathan Gannon did this last year with his defense. The Cardinals are not very good at defense overall. They don't have a lot of talent, But Jonathan Gannon, one thing he likes to do is borrow from like the old Belichick playbook of like take away what they do best. He did that a lot last year. And that seemed like his game plan, right? Like, we're going to let Buffalo run all over us. We're going to let you throw these little dink and dunk passes to Shakir and Samuel and Keon Coleman, and we're just not going to let Kincaid beat us because that's the only guy Josh wants to throw to. So, yeah, I basically agree with Todd. Like, I wouldn't have any concern. The only thing I would push back on is I think he's going to be more expensive than that. Like, I think you're going to have to trade away like Nico Collins to get him, like, or like if we're looking at receivers or like Chris Olave.
It's interesting because Todd, you brought up like the tight ends that went down, the struggles with some other tight ends. Does that somehow boost his value? I'm not sure. Like, I don't have a good pulse on it, and it's an interesting
me
one.
neither.
I kind of want to follow your lead, Todd, and kind of see if those work this week.
I've seen him get traded once already. I've been offered him in a trade and I've countered it. So, like, I don't know. I think that it seems like people are, when you get one target or whatever it was, 1 or 2 targets, that is a major concern. It's not like Njoku, he had a couple catches. Ingram was not good. He only had 1 catch. But like Kittle had a few catches. Like, they were all really bad, but there was some, like, Kelsey had a few catches. Pitts had the touchdown. There's at least some, it was slightly better in those areas. So I don't know. I think that he deserves to be in that Bowers, McBride, Laporta range. And I'm thinking maybe somebody like says, you know what, that tier needs to be broken up a bit. And
Laporta had a bad game too.
He's down in like and they drop him down just a little bit.
We're going to get into tight ends a little bit, but I think I might have a somewhat warm take on tight ends. So I'll save that for when we get there. But why don't we, I think we spent a good amount of time here on Bull and Bear. Why don't we hop right into our next segment, which is, like we always do, is the rookie report. Last year we had a lot of fun and spent a lot of time with this. I think there's some positions that maybe we can kind of, for right now, I don't think there's a lot of movement, but we'll touch on them briefly. If you guys have anything to add, we'll get in there, but otherwise we'll kind of get to the meat and potatoes and the fun ones, the debate a little bit. So
I think the easy one to jump at is Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, but I want to quickly jump to Bo Nix really quick.
Okay.
That was a pretty disappointing outing for him. And I think that a lot to blame is the receivers that he has. I don't think that Sean Payton is as this offensive guru that people want him to be. Like, he's so overrated. He had Drew Brees and just lived off him for years. So I'm a little scared out of Bo Nix right now. I don't think that.
Were you feeling good about Nix beforehand? Like,
like I got him in like the 201, 202 range in several leagues and felt great about it. I'm gonna, like, I gotta ride it out, but I don't feel like I was hoping for, like, all right, wheels up early in the season and like he's like a top 15 or 16 quarterback, and I think we're probably headed down a long road here with him.
So here's an interesting one. Are you taking right now, since you've seen week 1 from one of these two players, are you taking him over Penix? Like in a rookie redraft right now?
That's interesting.
I think I would maybe just take Penix, knowing that his value probably can't fall out the way that Bo Nix's could over the next.
Penix had the best week 1 of any rookie quarterback.
It's kind of crazy, right? Yeah, like that's what I'm kind of like. His value is somehow like protected. Like, Drake May still kind of like seems to be getting shit on because people think he's a little too overrated or whatever. I don't know what it is. Obviously not with our podcast, but in general, it seems like people are trying to like fight the like Drake May hype a little bit. Where like I think like everyone saw Cousins and they were just like, yuck, I don't like this. And
so
I don't know.
The only thing I will say in Bo Nix's defense, and I'm not a Bo Nix guy, Mike McDonald got hired by Seattle because of his ability as a defensive coordinator to absolutely put the opposing quarterbacks in a blender. And it's not just rookie quarterbacks. He did that to Joe Burrow last year. He did that to Pat Mahomes in the AFC Championship game last year. The Ravens beat the Lions 38-6 in Detroit with the Lions fully healthy, Goff had a miserable game. Brock Purdy, he did that to Brock Purdy on that Sunday night game where Brock Purdy lost the MVP race late in the year to Lamar Jackson. I have a lot of respect for Mike McDonald. I think that stud defensive tackle Byron Murphy that they drafted is going to be like a defensive rookie of the year candidate. I think Seattle's defense is pretty good. I would caution some patience is all. If you have Bo Nix and you're freaking out and you're looking to get rid of him, I would wait a little bit. And it's probably not going to get much better next week because they have the Pittsburgh Steelers. But so maybe like wait till after that to look and buy Nix for cheap. But I kind of agree with you like that. I would be concerned, but I wouldn't be freaking out over week one because I do think that's a good defense that they face that nobody really realizes is a good defense yet.
It's one of the just like, you know, the Family Guy meme, like it could be a boat kind of thing, like where like that's what's interesting to me about like rookie quarterbacks, especially where you can sit back and literally be behind a guy that just signed a massive contract and gain value.
Yeah.
And that's what we were kind of looking at with like Will Levis last year is like he could be like a top 3 round player. That's not looking as great anymore. And I'm wondering if the Bo Nix story looks similar to the Will Levis story, but we don't get that first game where Levis went off.
Do not listen to those episodes from last year. I recommend you start fresh with us this season. We're going to be all right. We're not going to miss on these types of things again. So, yeah, let's keep that in mind. I think just quickly, I think Jaden Daniels is probably going to have a couple pop games, I think, here pretty soon, just with his explosiveness. I think that was a better debut than he's getting credit for, in my opinion, for fantasy. I don't know about like real life. It might be like a Justin Fields PTSD situation for some people. But yeah, like quarterback in general to me, like I don't really have a lot of movement. Caleb doesn't change. Nothing's changed for me. And it won't for the entire year, I don't think.
What about Caleb versus Anthony Richardson?
Caleb for me.
So the only thing I really have on these rookie quarterbacks between Caleb and Jaden Daniels, and it's fine if anyone disagrees with this, but I did see a poll that had like 7,000 people vote in it, and it was split dead even 50-50 between Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams after week one. So if you have Jaden, you might annoy him, but I would reach out to the Caleb owner and see if he's interested in a swap. Maybe take a screenshot of that poll if you can find it. I can't remember which account tweeted it, but
if you're using Sleeper, like send the offer and then just like type LOL, and it could be ironic. It could be, you know, you're just having a good time. Like they can interpret that how they want. They can see the words and, you know, take it as they want to there. I think that's the play, right? Just a little LOL. What do you think? And then he can be like, ha ha ha, decline, and you're not gonna offend him. Or he's gonna be like, hi, you know what? I like this. I'm gonna switch and I'm gonna flip gears here.
The thing I'm waiting for with Caleb is next week he has Sunday Night Football against the Texans. If he looks miserable like he did in week one in prime time, everybody's watching. To me, that's when an actual buy window might open up. And it's not like you can get him for like a mid-first at that point. He's still going to cost 2 firsts and another piece at least. But that's when he might start being available. Like if he's just miserable again, I do think people are going to start getting like a little anxious about it. So,
somebody might be okay with pivoting from Caleb to like Kyler Murray or something.
Probably like Kyler, or like maybe Trevor has a great game. Dak, something like that. But
independent of week one, I would still look into those types of deals personally. If I had Caleb, I have a lot of Caleb, like just in terms of diversifying, like. We all know no one's a sure thing. I think he's pretty damn close to as one is for a quarterback. But like if I can pivot from Caleb and get like I'm probably looking into like on like borderline contending teams that have Caleb. That's probably a minority of people that have Caleb, but I have a bunch of teams like that for like Dak. What can I get for on top of Dak? Deal who didn't have like the most spectacular week one and is consistently underrated. I think you can get probably close to a first still for that type of deal.
Oh, yeah, I would think every bit of it. I was going to ask Dak and Devontae Smith or Caleb Williams.
See, like I'm taking the plus. And that's not a week one thing. I think Devontae's a good player. I think unless I'm like loaded a receiver, but like he's definitely going to be a starting caliber receiver. And I don't think Dak's as old as what Derive thinks he is. So
what about you, Matt? What do you
just never not gonna call back to that. But yeah, I just think it's a wise move to make. And I wouldn't sell all my Caleb's, but I would sell some for those situations, and it's not because of week one.
I don't know if you remember that. Someone on Twitter, Todd, last year before the season traded Dak for Roshan Johnson. And then
that was a deep cut reference. Yeah.
Went to war defending it for a bunch of
I do remember that. I do remember that in the comments. And then he was like at war in other comments about it as well.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite Twitter interactions of all time, Dynasty or not. It was so fun.
Roshan a healthy scratch in week one, by the way.
Oof. Yeah, so he's old too, apparently. Okay, so yeah, we'll transition from quarterbacks. Let's hop over to receivers, but I want to start with two receivers that were not talked about as much as those big two. I want to talk about Worthy and Brian Thomas Jr. I think those two are potential rocket ships, if not already rocket ships in value. I think, and I said this in one of my group chats. I was jokingly, someone asked for a hot take, and I said Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be the best receiver out of this class. I don't think that's probable, but I think he has the talent and the overall skill sets potential to be the best receiver of this class and not be like a knock on the other guys, Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. What do you guys think?
And could you make the argument that Brian Thomas has the best situation of any of them? Yes, Worthy has Mahomes, but Worthy is I don't see Worthy passing Rashee Rice anytime soon as far as targets. I think Brian Thomas by the end of the year, and maybe by next week, and I think maybe he led them week one in targets. They only threw it. I think he only had 19 targets in total.
It was good,
and he had 4 of them. So yeah, I think Brian Thomas. I only have one share in my 15 leagues, and I'm a little bit apprehensive about that. And I went through my leagues. He was actually going to be my bear or my bull for the week, but you guys did 2 receivers, so I decided to pivot and go for a tight end. But I am really uncomfortable with the fact that I have only one share of him.
Todd, what is the gap in one of your guys, T. Higgins? What is the gap between T. Higgins and Brian Thomas Jr. for you?
I would easily swap T for Brian Thomas.
You would swap.
Okay. Yeah, without question.
So that's a statement right there. That's a statement, I think.
In fact, I saw that as an opportunity to send a couple times today, and I didn't send it because I thought that would just get smash rejected.
I think there's a place where you find someone that's like had a terrible week one and they're thinking about, okay, I'll tank and T. Higgins might not play week 2 and that helps me kind of thing.
Okay.
I could see there's a route.
So
I'm surprised that you're selling them 1 for 1 though.
This could be me projecting a little bit because it's kind of how I feel, and I've never been a huge T. Higgins guy. He's always been like a classic blob guy to me, but
he definitely is. Yeah.
I think it's going to be like, I think a lot of people are like, man, fucking T is back on his fucking bullshit. Like, we don't know whether we can trust him. The upside's 16 points a game. Like, fuck no. Like to Todd's point, like, no, I'm not even countering that. Like, send a better offer. Brian Thomas's wheels up. Like,
yeah.
The one guy that I think has an argument to be in the same tier, and he was exactly in this tier during rookie drafts, is Ladd McConkey. And so he led the Chargers in targets, and that was with missing a lot of camp in preseason with like an injury. So I would be interested if I had Worthy and Brian Thomas Jr. I would be interested in reaching out to the Ladd McConkey owner and seeing what kind of plus they would be willing to give to tier up to Worthy or Brian Thomas. And then, a month from now, that trade could look great just straight up, and Ladd could just be better. So that's like one thing that I'm kind of tossing around. I haven't thrown any offers out, but
so Matt, if you have Worthy, are you selling Worthy for Ladd in a second, like a late second, let's say?
no, like I would want like some kind of upside, like upside with the second, like to like if it was like a juggernaut team second, like no, like if I'm sure it's going to be late, no. If it's like a mid second, sure. Or if there's like
I'm just
another,
assuming. I'm assuming McConkey owner probably had a late first. So like,
yeah, right.
let's
Oh,
let's
so yeah,
assume
it's a good, yeah,
let's
yeah,
assume it's their pick, contending pick.
yeah. Or I'm looking at lower tier guys that I like more than the market. Maybe the market values them at like a third, and I value them at like a mid to late second. Those type of guys. But it, I would still rather have Worthy straight up than Ladd and Brian Thomas. But
That
I
was my
would be
next question.
open to tearing down depending on what kind of plus I could get. And I feel like unless you love Ladd McConkey before the season started, like Zoltan and a couple other people did, I think his game could be like quietly overlooked a little bit. And I do think he looked good on the field. Like that touchdown he scored, he made that happen. It wasn't wide open or anything. He made a couple broken tackles to get in. So
I think I'm gonna like the value of Brian Thomas Jr. right now versus the value of Xavier Worthy. I think you can definitely get a plus. I don't think you would have to do 1-to-1. I think Worthy has significantly more hype overall.
then
And
Brian
it's
Thomas.
because I think so, at least from what I've seen. Like, I guess this, like, he's recently got some steam, but like Xavier Worthy was a hot name. Like you talked about earlier, like primetime game. They saw
Yeah.
2 pop plays. They see the potential of what he could be with
Mahomes.
Mahomes.
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
think a lot of
Yeah,
people
I think you
still
can move
doubt
Worthy
Trevor
for Brian
Lawrence.
Thomas.
What's that?
I think you could move Worthy for Brian Thomas.
So if you had, okay, that's fair. Okay, I just assume that like I feel like a lot of people view Worthy as a like not a significant tier, but a tier above Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I'm saying you
Todd's
could move.
agreeing with you.
You
Todd's
could
saying
move your Xavier Worthy for Brian Thomas, and I would make that trade.
Yeah.
All right, so to kind of move to the next guy, this is one of the stories of the weekend. It might even be number one in all of Dynasty. Brian, I'll start with you, and then we can get to Todd. Like Brian, how concerned, if any, are you about Marvin Harrison Jr. right now?
I'm not concerned. If you guys remember last year, I kind of said a little bit of he has tendencies to be fucking weird and appear lazy at times or like disinterested.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the supreme talent that he has because he does the tools, but like to me, like it's not a red flag of like panic sell or even sell, but it's a red flag that week 1 he can't get up for a game.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of like again kind of like running some wind sprints, but not fast wind sprints, getting some cardio in. I don't it's concerning in the sense of like what the fuck. And having a lot of Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm like, if I could right now, if I could sell him for exactly his value a week ago for a comparable player in that same range, I'd probably do it.
Yeah, like give me Garrett Wilson. Like, sorry.
Yeah.
So Todd, before you answer, like the one thing that concerns me, it's not the stat line, the box score, but to Todd's point about this guy being like dead last among the rookies in the average separation score. Again, on Twitter, there was a breakdown, side-by-side clips of Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. running the exact same route. Michael Wilson looks really crisp in and out of his break. Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like fucking Quentin Johnson. Like he just bumps into the safety and like does like some sloppy turnaround. Like it looked bad, man. So like I'm a little concerned. I'm not making any
concerned.
sense,
I'll just go outright, and I am concerned.
Okay.
I am a little bit. Yeah, that was bad. Like I don't know how you could have a worse week 1.
Yeah, that's where
like,
I'm at.
What could have gone worse? I mean, like he had a drop. I mean,
he could have been Quentin Johnson, Todd.
he was worse than Quentin Johnson yesterday. So yeah, that was really bad. And like you said, if I can trade him for Garrett Wilson, I think you'll get laughed at. If you can trade him for Puka, that might be possible with the injury. So that one might be something you could look into. I would trade him for Puka. In fact, I have 3 shares, 15 leagues. I'm going to go make some offers and try to. I'm not going to just like get rid of him, but if I can move him for Garrett Wilson or Puka, I would only move him for Puka on a tank team. I wouldn't do that if I was contending, because I'm obviously Puka's going to be out for 8 weeks, and over the next 8 weeks, maybe Marvin Harrison.
It's funny because I wonder how like gun shy we are after these wide receiver crashes of the last few years, and as recently as JSN last year, the difference. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to hold value at least similarly to JSN for this season, unless he does something absolutely bizarre. I don't know what that thing would be. But like,
to be clear, I'm not even looking at that next tier down of guys like Olave, London, Waddle. I'm not trying to tear down from there. I'm just same tier, like you said, from a week ago or 3 days ago. Can I just shift to a Garrett Wilson or a Puka? All right, here's one. Can you add a little bit and go get ARSV? Can you take Marvin in like a couple seconds and be like, you know what, for ARSV? I wonder if that would get done.
I think you might have had a chance. You might have had a chance of that a week ago. I don't think you can right now. That's like perception wise. I think people are a little like, I don't know about this one. Like,
yeah,
for,
I think
for an ARSB,
if you're on Twitter and you're seeing some of the things that Matt's referring to, but that's a very small bubble of people that
you're.
Yeah, it could just be like it could just be someone who had him ranked above him on pre.
Yeah, there's people that did.
Yeah, I mean that was fucking nuts, but yeah, there are people that did. So like,
I mean, if only like to have people confirm their priors. Like some people are stubborn enough that they'll make the trade even if they don't feel good about it because they want to say that they had it right if it does become right.
And he's just a cool guy to have on your team. Like it's just fun.
Hey, listen, I have a bunch of them, so I agree. It's cool.
So before we move to the next one, last trade I'll throw out at you guys. You have Marvin Harrison. You offer the Brian Thomas owner Marvin for Brian Thomas and let's say a mid first, and he counters and adds a mid second. Would you do that for a 1-2 swap? So you're getting Brian Thomas and a mid first for Marvin Harrison and a mid second.
No, I would hold Marvin there.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
like I'm very concerned. I'm not like
you're not acting on that concern.
Like running for the hills. Like I'm just
as much as we just raved about Brian
packing
Thomas,
my bags a little bit, and I'm like telling the kids maybe we need to get in the car, but I'm not peeling out of the driveway quite yet.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's the correct reaction.
But I am concerned. Let's be very clear. I'm very concerned.
It's the two like it's the meme with like the two like highway signs where you're just like skidding over to the right, like okay.
But I think that's an interesting one, Matt, because here's the thing.
Yeah.
I was going through and I was like, I really want to try to send some Brian Thomas offers. And I kept landing on teams where my best wide receiver option to trade was Marvin Harrison Jr. And I was like, no, I can't send Marvin Harrison Jr. It's too soon for that. Like I can't do that one. I was hoping to do all right, here's one. Going back to Brian Thomas and we can move on. Brian Thomas, Cooper Kupp.
I'm taking Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
On any build. Like there's no contender I should need the points that badly where I go from contender to non-contender if I make that trade.
Yeah. Okay. So we have my rankings up on the board right here. Are we like just one more decent game away from Brian Thomas moving up to that like kind of globby tier with like it's like Devontae Smith, Brandon Ayuk, Pickens, Tank Dell, Romadunze?
I think he's almost there now.
I think he's knocking on the door, but you could easily open the door and smash a pie in his face and he's backwards again.
Like because all it takes is like next week those 3 targets on they have 30 attempts and he has 1 catch and you're like, oh wait, what were we doing? We got way over.
Yeah, it's But I think the
He
thing
looks good
is,
though.
if it's one of those, like, you wanna get on the rocket ship while it's going, like
It's the 2-week bump that Matt mentioned. I mean, if he does another good week, it's over. You're not getting him. He's
yeah,
worth Olave.
yeah,
Well, and like the thing with Brian Thomas is like he wasn't just doing it on like a couple busted coverages or whatever. He was like out there running big boy routes like hitches and goes and comebacks and like getting open. And if you're telling me the target competition is Gabe Davis, Evan Ingram, and Christian Kirk,
yeah,
like
and
you should be able to alpha that group pretty easily if
and
like you're a mid first round pick.
and to that point, Matt, he was labeled raw as a football player. He's new to the game. Like, he just started playing relatively like 5, 6 years ago. He started playing football. So it's
And
like
and there's a
he was
there's
labeled
a
an athlete that, like, if he ever develops, and if you're talking about him developing and showing legitimate routes, this is something that, again, rocket ships.
And this is why I like following a lot of beat reporters for every team on Twitter. There's a Jacksonville beat reporter who's not afraid to be critical of the team named John Shipley. And the first couple weeks of minicamp, Shipley was very critical of Brian Thomas. He was like, "Look, I don't see what I need to see right now. Gabe Davis is playing over him. He's playing a lot better than him. He's running crisper routes." And then he completely changed his tune in the month of August and was like, "Hey, like whatever clicked in place, clicked in place. And Brian Thomas is the best player on the field. He's the best non-quarterback we have on offense." And he was saying this before week one, and then I think we saw it a little bit. So yeah, I don't know. It's easy. Brian Thomas is a hard one to figure out, but I think he's close to already being valued in that glob. And it could be like 3 weeks from now that we're like, man, remember when Brian Thomas was a glob receiver and now he's wide receiver 7 in Dynasty? Like that could happen.
A great example is, I remember, and you guys saw this team, where Todd was like, "How the hell did you get this team like at
Yeah.
all?" And I remember this trade like it was yesterday, because I traded Joe Mixon and a second for Justin Jefferson the week before he exploded, and it was
Yeah.
just like that's the type of thing where you're looking where I could have looked like an absolute moron, in hindsight, if you look back, and like Justin Jefferson was just a total bust. Like, I gave away a good running back for multiple years and a second round pick for a guy that is Quentin Johnson or whatever. But he turned out to be Justin Jefferson. Like, I'm not saying Brian Thomas again is that type of that's going to happen, but
He kind
it's
of
within
looks.
the range of outcomes, and that's enough for me to take that gamble.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
agreed.
we've spent a lot of time on rookie receivers. I don't think rookie running backs deserve anything other than Bucky Irving. We can talk about him briefly, but other than that, who the hell are we going to talk about?
Yeah, I don't have anything on him. Maybe hold Benson. He could be a nice handcuff for the rest of the year. Bucky Irving, nice game, man. I have nothing else, and there's obviously no tight ends to talk about, so I'm good to move on.
Yep.
Yeah, I would also throw Ray Davis in the Benson category. They're the clear handcuffs to the starters. And I also think Neighbors, there's not much to say, right? Like everything we thought came to fruition in week 1.
Oh,
He's fucking sick. He's fucking sick. His quarterback is terrible. It's going to look a lot like Garrett Wilson and Zach Wilson,
yeah,
right?
it's the Garrett Wilson saga. Just rewind the last 3 years of Garrett Wilson, and
if you drafted Neighbors and held him going into the season, this is what you expected.
6 for 60.
Yeah,
keep it moving.
Oh, Doomsday.
You're gonna need
I don't know.
You're gonna need a lot of yak.
Doomsday's kind of interesting with the MCL sprain or whatever. He's out like for a couple weeks, but it's not serious. He didn't do anything in his debut. Caleb was a mess. The offense was a mess. He might be an interesting buy low, but like
I mentioned him in the Monday morning wide receiver podcast, which is on the feed. So if you want my take, you can go there. Concerns.
Yep.
Cool.
That works.
Yeah, I don't really have much of a take. Yeah, nothing really changes for me. Tight end, my take is that Brock Bowers should not be tight end 1. I think Matt thinks he should be. I think he should be more like tight end. Like, I would be uncomfortable putting him ahead of like 3 or 4 guys. I think that's my hot take, and it's not because of anything other than like I just think we're rushing to something that isn't necessarily there yet. And he's got like for a tight end, you have to show me something at this like if he shows me something, he'll skyrocket and I missed out on, any other opportunities. But right now I can't treat a tight end in a weird offense as anything other than a project right now. So I can't treat him as a tight end number one. And to me, tight end number one is saying like I want him on a contending team or a young team, like all the same. To me, it's like it's transcendent of build, and that's not what I wouldn't want him as my tight end one on a heavy contender.
Let's just talk tight end as we're kind of going into the vet report now. Probably spend less time on the vets than we did on the rookies. We just talk the vets really quick. The tight end landscape, and you kind of alluded to it at the top, Brian, but the tight end landscape is very interesting right now because I think there's a lot of people that are like, oh, there's a lot of different good tight ends that I like. I think that the reason that we feel that way is that because there's not 2 or 3 really good ones like there was there for a while where we had like Kelsey and Andrews and everybody was like, oh, the rest of them suck. Well, now it's like they're all solid, but none of them are separating themselves from the pack. And so it's for me, it's like I want one of the top 4. It's like I want one of Bowers, Kincaid, McBride, or Laporta. Laporta is the most expensive, so I don't have any of him. McBride seemed very gettable, so I got more of him. And then I have a little bit of Kincaid. And I drafted a little bit of Bowers. So I'm just kind of like mixed and matched on the guys tight end 2, 3, 4, and then got some Hawk and Andrews on teams as well. And that's kind of like how I make my tight end rooms. And I like having a couple of those guys, but yeah, I don't think that any of them deserve. I don't think any of them deserve what Laporta's treatment is like a whole tier above on the value chain.
I think we got an outlier season from Laporta last year. I think he's a really good player. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. And I still think he's probably in the running for tight end one for sure. But it's like you're saying, it's not like 1 or 2 tiers above everybody else, which is kind of how he was treated. And for the most part. So yeah.
He's going at the end of round 2 in startups. And you could get McBride like the end of round 3.
He got like kind of like the Kyle Pitts from the year before treatment in the offseason pretty much, right? And I fell prey to that. So
yeah, really though. I mean, so I'm totally fine with anybody who has Laporta, McBride ahead of Bowers, even Kincaid, even though I definitely disagree with that one. But like Laporta and McBride, I wouldn't fight at all. I think there's a good chance Bowers is a top 5 or 6 tight end this year in redraft. So I'm fine rolling him out as my tight end one.
Even I am too.
And if he is, yeah, I'll happily. I have plenty of him. I'll happily cry. I just don't see it coming to fruition this year.
And to that's
earlier, like to me, that's why I just like in a definition sense, like I can't put him as tight end one.
Back 2 or 3 years ago, like if you had tight end 5 or 6 on your contender, you were losing massive points each week to the other best teams in the league that were starting. Now starting Brock Bowers as your tight end 5 as a contender, you're really not losing much each week. You lose like a point or 2 points per game, or whatever it ends up being. But it's not like it was 2 or 3 years ago.
So, any other tight ends you guys want to cover before we go into any other section?
Real quick, I think Isaiah Likely at least deserves a little bit of a shout out.
Yeah.
I mean, we mentioned Mark Andrews, and maybe it was like, game plan specific, and they were doubling and tripling Mark Andrews. But I think it's definitely worth monitoring. If I had Isaiah Likely, I have a lot of them just because he was so cheap, not because I necessarily believed in anything other than cheap. I would be holding him unless someone's giving me something ridiculous. I think Todd tweeted about like the keep trade cut ranking shift that he had overnight.
He was tight end 7 like Monday or Sunday or something like that. He's already tight end 6 now in KT.
Friday.
He's outrageous. Like that's out of control.
So if someone wants to pay like a first for him, like cool, sell his ass. Like no matter what, even if he's a superstar, you're not like that. There's a lot of outcomes where he's not a superstar, and I don't think there's many tight ends that are even superstars that are worth much more than that. So like sell him at his ceiling outcome, like absolutely. But
So
like,
you're in the league where I sold him after the Thursday night game
yeah,
to our buddy Jake, and I did not get a first. So I sold him. Curious what you think of this, Todd. I sold him for what is guaranteed to be an early second and Khalil Shakir. And I know I like Shakir more than I should, but but like I viewed Shakir as like a mid to late second. And like basically, I viewed Shakir and Likely very similar before the season started.
Yeah.
I would have preferred Shakir, and then I'm just like, all right, I'm getting a free early second, like sold. Like I'm not going to wait and see if this like he's a breakout. I don't have any concerns about Andrews. I think Likely looks legitimately good and should be bumped up quite a bit from his preseason value, but Andrew still ran more routes than him, and he just got double teamed the entire game. So I expect Andrews to have a lot of big games this year still.
I just
So
can't.
two things. Your
I'm still, I'm
trade.
s-
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm an Andrews guy, but I can't get that image of like when he caught that one and just like kind of like crumbled to the ground towards the end of the game, and he
Yeah,
just
that
like
was a tough
looked
one.
so old and decrepit. It was like,
Yeah.
oh God, I don't like this.
So your
Yeah.
trade, to be fair, also you did that before week 1 where you got Shakir. I think that there was a world where Shakir comes out and he goes gangbusters as like, one of
Yeah,
their
like 6
high-end.
for 80. Yeah,
Yeah. And that didn't really happen. He did have a touchdown, which it was like a screenplay, I think it was. That looked pretty good. I don't mind the trade. I mean, I would probably prefer Likely and hope that he has another big game, and then maybe I can move him for more next week. But if he goes 2 for 20 next week, then you're like, oh wow, that was a steal of a trade for me. Or if Shakir had gone off, I think it's a little bit of a gamble. But so I don't mind it. As for Andrews, I'm a little bit cautious with him. I don't feel. I think he's probably more almost like in the same tier as Likely, which may be a kind of a hot take. I think after the Ferguson and Njoku injuries, I don't see any reason why Likely would be behind them. I think he should be ahead of those guys. One thing with Likely is he almost operates as a wide receiver. So yes, it is like they have 2 tight ends on the same team, but it's by position almost, like, or by name almost. It's not really Likely doesn't really act as a tight end the entire game. He's acting as a receiver. They're in a lot of 12 personnel, which is kind of not even 12 personnel. So
well,
and their offensive line's not good, so that's going to continue.
To your point, the interesting thing from that game was they were even running 12 personnel in the 2-minute drill, which you almost never see. So, like, yeah, Likely is a straight up receiver when it's 12 personnel for the most part, outside if it's a pass play, obviously.
Yeah. So, you laugh about KTC's ranking of him as tight end 6. That does seem a little bit outrageous to me. But I would have him ahead of Ingram, Njoku, and Ferguson now. So what, tight end 8 or 9? So, I mean, there he is.
Yep. And with him and Kittle, it's almost like contending versus not, or I mean, it's an argument.
And I've been on the Pitts sucks train for the last year, so I mean, we're at a game away from just being like screw Pitts. I'm just going to drop him, but Likely ahead of him.
So
all right,
so we're talking Likely. Why don't we talk a couple more maybe ascending values here? So vet ascending values. Who are some of our favorites? What are we paying for? What would we want to sell for? So like an example, Cooper Kupp. Obviously, ascending value. Puka being injured. Obviously, he had 14 catches on 1,015 targets. Jordan Mason obviously looked great in a primetime game, filling in for CMC. Maybe Baker Mayfield is potentially ascending to a certain degree. Like, oh, he can do it again. Who are some of our favorites here? And like Matt, what are you paying for Cooper Kupp, or have you already bought him a bunch?
No, I've not. I bought him before the season started in that Joe Cronin league that you guys are in, where the main piece that I gave up was Jaden Reed for him, but it was like a 4-for-4 trade that don't need to get into. But
yeah,
if I'm trying to buy Cooper Kupp right now, I wonder if I'm rostering Odunze. I think I'm okay trading Odunze straight up for Cooper Kupp. which you could probably get done depending on.
Is that obviously? I would assume it just on a contending only. Like if you're in
Yeah,
like
yeah,
unbeaten,
yeah.
like a rebuild.
Even if I think there's the slightest chance that I'm going to fall out of the playoffs, like there's no way I'm making this trade. But like if I'm a strong contender, and let's say I don't fucking know, like let's say I lost Puka, right, and then I lost Odunze, and those were like two young guys that were going to give me a lot this year. Something like that, then and like my team's pretty strong. Other than that, I'm okay sending Odunze straight up. I like if I'm a contender and I'm certain it's going to be late, I'm definitely okay paying a first, and then if it's a first and second, I think I'm still okay paying that. But like I'm probably trying to get another piece back. But I think that's what you kind of have to pay.
Yeah. I think
the-
it's a classic Fat Joe moment where it's like yesterday's price is not today's price. Like I think you could have found plenty of Cup owners before week 1 willing to sell him for something palatable, but now it's like you gotta pay me my money. Like that's where it's at right now. If I have Cooper Cup, like we were joking about it in our chat. I have a team that I've been trying to rebuild for like 2 years, and I just can't get the deals and activity in the league to pick up. And it's like I was trying to give away Cooper Cup. I was trying to give away Derrick Henry. I have Cousins, like all those guys. Cup's the only one, obviously, that it went the right way at least. But that price is no longer there, buds. Sorry.
And the other thing I would caution against, if you're going to sell Cooper Cup right now, just know that this week there's a Rams Cardinals game, and those have been shootouts the last couple of years. The Rams don't have anybody, or the Cardinals don't have any notable players in their secondary. I think there's a good chance Cooper Cup just fucking kills them. Like we're talking 14 catches, 180 yards, and a touchdown type shit. So that would be the game I'm waiting for. If I'm going to sell Cooper Cup, I'm going to wait to see how that game goes. And maybe he's just average and shit, I missed my chance to cash out high. But like, I like his chances of really securing a bag after next week.
His floor is incredibly high next week for sure.
Yeah,
right. The floor you're looking at is like 8 or 9 catches and like 75, 80 yards. Like that's
it does feel that way right now. So
we're not going into like peak Cup, but like pretty close.
Holding. I think the concern with him is you keep holding and then he pulls a hamstring, and then you're like, wow, why did I? And that's why I'm not buying. I'm not buying him right now on any team, because like I'm just not gonna give up a first for hopefully like 5 or 6 really good weeks, and then like once Puka gets back, maybe he's still really good. I'm not expecting top 5 wide receiver play the rest of the year, but maybe he's really good. But you're still opening yourself up to the rest of the season that he could end up with a hamstring or an ankle sprain or something. Then you don't even have him in the playoffs. So I'm just gonna take the medicine. I don't have him on my team for if that's the situation. I'm not going to go out there and try to buy him.
And similarly, I think you have to take your medicine if anyone's trying to buy low on him, you have to take your medicine. And like if it bites you in the ass, so be it. I think that's where I'm at with him, because it's not going to be his peak like a couple of years ago where he was breaking records and just outrageous.
Week 1 it looked like that.
But I don't think he's going to have the massive games, but I think like we're talking about the extremely high floor, the potential for a massive game here and there. He's not going to me, I don't see 15 catches for 150 yards every game, but like he has, like you're saying, 7, 8, 9 catches and 80 yards is, it's going to be there as long as he's healthy.
Stafford's and what are you selling for again?
Not more than a 1.
Less
than 2 1s, but 1 and I would probably ask for a 1 and 2 2s, and everyone would tell me to fuck off. Probably.
No, I mean, I think if it's a late 1, I think it's a late 1. It's reasonable ask. I mean,
and if not, and if they don't want to pay it, that's where I say, okay, I'm holding him. And to Matt's point, he's going to have another game. He's going to have whatever, or it's back to school. It's
yeah. Well, and like I said, the worst thing that you're sitting there is that he could get hurt. That's kind of your worst case scenario, but he's most likely going to go 8 for 80.
Yeah, or like we talked about, this is where I like to use other players that I'm higher on than market, especially rookies or young guys. Like maybe it's like a late first, late second, and 80 Mitchell. And then I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll take that. I would probably sell for that right now.
Yeah, I would too.
So yeah. All right. So with Tampa Bay, I'm a little bit interested in buying some Chris Godwin right now. Like he looked fucking good. And the only thing that gives me some pause with Tampa Bay is they faced like pretty much the worst defense of all of last year. Washington got lit up. Like Justin Fields threw for like 300 yards against this defense last year, just to give you an idea of how bad they were. DJ Moore had like 200 receiving yards in that game. So I'm skeptical that Tampa Bay is just like this new greatest show on turf, led by Baker Mayfield. But like, I do think they're going to be pretty good offensively all year long. And, Godwin's now like 2-3 years removed from that ACL injury. And he's back in the slot. A lot was made about that. That's where he does his best work. Him and Evans both had an awesome game, and their third wide receiver, Jalen McMillan, played like 90% of the snaps, and he was open. He scored a touchdown. He should have had another 50-yard touchdown that was called back or nullified by defensive pass interference. Yeah. So like Baker and Godwin are the two guys. Like Evans, I think is just whatever. I think he costs a lot, and I'm fine if you like him at his price. I don't think it's moved much. But like Godwin, I think you could still maybe get for like less than a first. And if I'm a contender, I'm interested in that.
I think he and Evans, for that matter, have been like just kind of generationally underrated at this point, for different reasons maybe. But like Godwin, we joke about like he always is the guy at the end of an auction where he's just like, oh, $3. Okay, Chris Godwin, sure.
Yeah, I'll take him. Yeah,
and then he has like a good game or a good season, and you're like, oh yeah, this is kind of nice. It's a value game with him, and I think he's a great value probably right now. I'm just surprised that you're so interested in him with how I've heard you speak about Jalen McMillan. And we know what Mike Evans is going to be, red zone and that type of stuff. So it's interesting. I'm not saying it's like a negative. I'm surprised to hear you say
it. This is where I admit I'm also a little Baker curious. Like I kind of want to see what his price is. Like I've never wanted to buy Baker Mayfield in my life. I have him on one team. It's my oldest dynasty league. And like 2 years ago when Baker didn't have a job, I bought him for like a 26th third. When I was hanging out with my buddy Ryan, and I have Jordan Love on that team, so now I'm throwing Baker into the lineup next week because I have to. But like David Galtieri, I think his name is, he had an interesting tweet after the games yesterday where he was basically saying like, or I think this might have even been before week 1, where he said Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield scored almost identical points per game last year. They both got an extension this year. They both have good offensive talent around them. And Jared Goff's been like 2 to 3 times more expensive all offseason. Like he goes in round 4 of startups and Baker goes in like round 7 or 8, which I think if we did a startup tonight, Baker's going higher than that. But like, yeah, if I can get Baker for a couple twos, yeah, I'm kind of interested in that.
I have Baker in my oldest dynasty league is a 1 QB league, and I have Baker in that league, and my supposed starter is Justin Herbert. I will be starting Baker Mayfield in week 2.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm talking about. So like, again, going back to this, like anything that's less than a first. And like, I totally don't blame Brian for laughing. Like, we're talking about fucking Baker Mayfield and Chris. Mayfield and Chris Godwin.
It's a bizarre world we're in right
now. This is what week 1 does to people, man. Like, especially people that like to react quickly, like I do.
Yeah, it's very similar to like the baseball season. I don't know if you've ever played fantasy baseball, but like after the first week, people absolutely lose their mind. But if you take like the first week of baseball and like just throw it to like some random week in July or August, like you wouldn't even care about that week. But like for some reason, the first couple of weeks of the baseball season, people lose their mind over like some guy going like 3 for 18 or something. So yeah,
he's on pace.
Like pace ourselves here and just stay calm. But I'm going to go ahead and just not be calm and just make a statement that Devon Achane should be in the Gibbs, Gibbs, Brees tier for dynasty running backs.
What do you think?
And in fact, if somebody offered me their Gibbs for my Achane straight, I don't even know if I'd accept it.
I'll say this.
If you have a Gibbs, are you paying for Achane then? Like flip side, like
I don't have any Gibbs, but yeah, if I had Gibbs, I would be trying to do some sort of market equitable trade. Yeah.
So like, if we could just turn off injuries, I'm with you. Like,
how is Gibbs
can we
see him not injury prone?
So I'm not saying he's not injury prone. Like, so Miami is like. Especially with McDaniel, is like notorious for downplaying and misleading on injuries. Achane already has like some kind of mysterious ankle injury. We don't fucking know if he's going to play or practice.
Last play of the game.
Yeah, so like if they just announced tomorrow, hey, it's a high ankle sprain, he's going on IR. Like it would not surprise me.
Yeah.
So
I don't think he's not going to play Thursday. I don't think that's
really?
what my gut says.
That's literally and yeah, Todd, to your point, it's not like. If this was like in June, I'm not worried about, one back being injury prone versus the other. It's just like Achane is literally hurt right now. I think or he might just be fine by Thursday. I really don't know. So
he and Moser were both, I think, absent from practice today. Pretty sure.
Yeah,
they were both EPs, but I mean, it's the.
Yeah, it's. I just like my gut just feels like it's that, and him missing this Thursday doesn't mean that he should or shouldn't be above Jahmyr Gibbs. It's just.
I'm with you though, Todd.
Like there's something potentially there that's looming that would rain on this otherwise very sunny day. Because I mean, he's great to watch. It's a lot of fun. He obviously has the explosiveness. He obviously has the juice. Like there's no doubt about it. And if he's healthy. He gets passing work. Oh, goodness.
They were adamant about getting him the ball in the passing game, which was nice to see. He didn't even have a good running game. He had 7 carries for 20-something yards. Like, he had a poor running game, and he scored 20 points.
Well, and the thing, so we were talking kind of during the offseason. I mentioned that at one point I had no Gibbs shares because I sold them all for Achane Plus. And Achane was like one of my biggest buy targets all offseason. And then in the 2 weeks leading up to the season, I did actually buy Gibbs in 2 separate leagues. And the thing that's easy to forget with how exciting Gibbs is like, I know it's annoying to say, but David Montgomery's not going anywhere. He's going to touch the ball 15 to 20 times every fucking game. You're just going to have to deal with that as a Gibbs owner. And Mostert is kind of nice. But he's not guaranteed or locked into 15 to 20 touches the way Montgomery is. And, as long as Montgomery is healthy, it's going to be kind of frustrating to be a Gibbs owner, I think. I think you just got to kind of deal with it and take the 30-point games with the 10-point games, really. But, man, last thing on Achane, though, that wide receiver 3 usage was nice. Like he basically ran a bunch of routes. I think he finished 6 catches, 75 yards. That's exciting stuff. There's a lot of coaches that talk about using their dynamic running backs in the slot and out wide, and McDaniel actually did it. And he did it in a game against another AFC contender that wasn't overly game script friendly. So.
It gives Debo, right? It's kind of like the flip side Debo that's a cool thing to have. I thought it was super interesting, and I wonder how much I'm sure they wouldn't have used him as much in the backfield, but I wonder how much they're planning on using Debo and San Fran in the backfield. Especially if there's a Sauce Gardner type matchup where he might get, kind of blocked off, to get him touches. They're really good about that, and I don't see why they wouldn't try and do the same with Achane for sure.
All right. So one thing I don't know how much time we have left. One thing I do want to touch on before we get out of here. I'm pretty damn concerned about the entire Atlanta Falcons offense. Time is a flat circle, all that shit. I'm not excited about Bijan even. Like I
I'm
think
excited about Bijan. He's going to get a lot of touches, but I'm with you on the Falcons offense.
I think he'll be fine, but like Kirk Cousins cannot fucking move.
Yeah,
Like
no
I think
play
we
action
see.
pass,
I think
no play actions, one
no,
pass
yeah,
under center, and it was a
no
spike.
play action is crazy.
Yeah, it was.
I saw someone talking about how just like how labored it looked for him to be under center at all. Like
I think we see Penix before Halloween, man. Like unless it's just a fluke and like Cousins gets his mobility back in the next few weeks, like they cannot run an offense with this version of Kirk Cousins. The like, yeah, I mean Cousins played under center a lot in Minnesota. To Todd's point, he used play action a lot.
Yeah,
Kirk Cousins has never been a pistol quarterback. Like he's also been a very timing oriented quarterback where, you know, my drop back is this many steps, turn around, fire in this certain spot. All that timing's thrown off. He's on a completely new team, new system, all that shit. He cannot fucking move. It might be an overreaction and they might just look awesome next week, but I'm heavily concerned about the Falcons. And yeah, like Bijan, I wouldn't change his value, but like London and Pitts, I actually think looked okay. Like I think he looked like not hobbled like he has in the last couple of years a little bit, but none of it's going to matter if Cousins can't get him the ball. And Drake London, I'm kind of concerned about. I've been pretty high on Drake London this offseason. And
can I just throw one last one out here? Some random vet comparison, and I'm curious what Matt's take is. I put this in the notes.
Yeah.
Who are you taking, Bryce Young or Trey Lance? Long pause.
I'm taking Bryce Young, but like, there's a reason I don't roster Bryce Young. Like, if you offered me 2/3, yeah, I'll take it. Like, I think this.
All right, well, you had your Falcons concern. I'll throw out. We'll kind of do an impromptu segment of final thoughts here of like what's on your mind. Mine is go make offers to the Jordan Love and Puka owners and see what you can get done. Kind of go in there and prey on the weak and see what kind of trades you can get done. Brian?
On that same note, and this might come off lazy, so I'll do another one after this, but I think this is a good time maybe to buy Jaden Reed. For that same example that people are going to see probably. I would wait probably this week. I think they're going to struggle as an offense with Willis, I think. And if that happens, I think people will overreact to the impact and forget that Jordan Love isn't out that long, similar to why you're trying to buy him. And I think that opens up all of the Green Bay receivers. Honestly, I'm buying all of the Green Bay receivers, but obviously Jaden Reed would be a priority.
You paying a late first for Jaden Reed?
I think you can wait a week and not pay that.
Okay.
I think people will see the light at the end of the tunnel on Jordan Love coming back after like a week. But I think if I had him, I probably wouldn't sell for anything less than a late first.
I was going to say, I thought that's why, like, I have enough Reed where I'm not trying to buy him, surprisingly, actually. But, like, I assume that any offer would have to start at, like, late first or better value. But
Brian, I have here on the screen all of the receivers that I consider in the glob. Would you, any of the older guys, DK, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, would you trade any of them for Jaden Reed?
No.
I think I would trade
maybe DJ Moore.
Would you trade JSN, Zay Flowers, or Ladd for Jaden Reed?
I would trade JSN for Jaden Reed, but I don't think you can get that done now.
I would do that too. And that's a change.
I think you could probably get that done on a lot of occasions. Maybe not to a Packer fan like Matt, but I think you could get that done quite a bit. People still really like him. Now, another bad week, and then that 2-week bump on the downslope for JSN is going to be bad. What about Jordan Addison?
Yeah,
give me Reed there. Okay, what about Kupp, Adams, Debo?
I wouldn't do Debo. I have Debo the highest of those three. If I was an ultra contender, I'm not trading Kupp for that. As I said, like I think he's probably like a 1 and 2 twos, and that's just like too much. He's worth too much to a contending team right now that you gotta pay me off of him. Devontae Adams. I think I would, because I think his days of like total game changer, like where we kind of what we just talked about, Cooper Kupp, I don't think those types of games are probably in his range of outcomes with
Not
his
with his
current
QB situation. Yeah,
Yeah.
not with that situation. Okay. All right. Well, that wraps us up. Thanks for joining the Dynasty Market Watch, where yesterday's price is not today's price. Matt, you can find him on Twitter at Dynasty Peasant. You can find Brian at Brian_O'Leary1. And I'm Todd at Dynasty SFlex. We'll be back after week 2. Thanks for joining.
You come join our Discord.